I just thought this was quite funny. This is another one of Ben's Freudian slips.
So no response has to be, or no review or critique has to be complete. It doesn't have to be. That's not necessary. Anyway, well, I'll start with Apollo Defectives Part 1, which is it's just called the Apollo Defectives. It's the first video he uploaded, so we'll begin. We'll let him begin. He puts up a copyright disclaimer notice, which is fair enough. I mean, I'll probably do the same. Although he should know, I'm not the petty-minded kind of. I'm not the petty-minded kind of person who would like false flag his videos. I don't do that sort.
He's not a petty-minded person that would false flag my videos. You can see what's on Ben's mind all the time. He lives conspiracy. False flag. It's got to be a false flag. He wouldn't flag my video as copyright. That's what he means, but he's saying false flag. He wouldn't false flag my video. I know you wouldn't, Ben, and I wouldn't do that to you. But the reason I showed that caption was because there is material on there that other than from your video. So that's what you got to bear in mind, mate. If it's just you, I wouldn't bother. And I do understand that. Even though we're on other sides of the fence, and I wouldn't flag your videos, and I wouldn't expect you to flag mine. I certainly wouldn't false flag them, Ben. But if the videos contain material from other sources, then the caption goes up. So that's what that's all about. But I thought that Freudian slip from Ben, I thought was worth pointing out. He's not going to false flag my videos, and he's talking about copyright flagging my videos. Yeah, that's just a little interesting point. I just wanted to, because it clearly shows Ben's mindset. Okay, here we have Ben, who thinks he's addressing a point that I made. Scott Henderson. He showed a picture of the Apollo 16 and 17 lunar rovers, and then this is on the All This site. I think I left that on the actual original video. I left a link to that particular page on the All This site, and I'll do the same below. It shows two lunar rovers from Apollo 16 and 17, and he says both have got a broken rear right fender. This means that either all three of the rovers broke their rear right fenders, or they used the same rover for shooting all three lunar scenes, if you like. And Ben's saying, I'll let Ben explain.
All three wheels in a second. But I only see pictures of two rovers, don't you?
Yeah.
No. How does he draw the conclusion?
Yes.
You see two pictures of lunar rovers. Yeah.
Where's the picture of the Apollo 15 rover with the missing?
Oh, look, that is nitpicking. What he's saying is.
No, it's not nitpicking at all. It's showing a very clear point, and that is that you get distortions and exaggerations from these people. The Apollo 15 lunar rover broke the front left fender, not the rear right. So, he's saying all three broke the rear right. So he's trying to bolster his ridiculous argument that it's the same rover. When, it obviously isn't. We all know there's three different rovers. But that's what the impression he's trying to give by saying that. This is not a mistake. This is not just using the wrong word. This is a deliberate lie. And I'll tell you what, Ben, now that that's been highlighted, and you agree that Scott's just used the wrong word and he meant both rovers instead of all three rovers, perhaps he could correct the caption under the two images of the lunar rovers on the All This site and show a bit of integrity, possibly.
Well, I won't let him ramble on too long. But what he's basically saying is that what Steve said was
Come on, Ben, you can do it. Get it together.
What Scott said, either all the rovers are, either it's the same, either they're different rovers, all
Come on, Ben, spit it out.
They all use the same rover. He used the word all when he should have used the word both.
Now, this is Scott Henderson, remember? all the rovers, when he should have used both. So perhaps, Ben, you can have a word with your mate and get him to correct that misleading caption below the 2 images of the lunar rovers on the Orlis site.
That is literally the only thing, this long, drawn-out diatribe by Steve, which has gone on for about 3 minutes now, that's the point he's making. OK, they used a different one for Apollo 15.
Oh, did they, Ben? What a surprise. They used a different rover for Apollo 15. Who would have picked that, really?
And Scott should have said both rovers, not all rovers.
Yes, he should, because he's giving completely the wrong impression. He's trying to bolster his ridiculous claim. And OK, well, I'm going to leave that there. I don't think there's much point continuing on with it. I think the point has been made, and I think Scott Henderson should go straight to the Orlis site and correct the caption below those the photographs of the Apollo 16 and 17 lunar rovers, don't you? Let that run on a bit. Here's Ben. He sort of looks a little confused. He's rambling a bit here.
He meant the ones from 16 and 17. That's what Steve is criticising him for. He's pulling him up for using a different word.
Well, I'm pulling him up for being deliberately misleading. He's trying to give the impression that all 3 rovers had the same damage. You know, they're fender extensions. They're not even parts of the fender. They run on rails. They were prone to breaking. And he's saying all 3 rovers had the same right rear fender damage. And that's a deliberate lie. On Apollo 16 and Apollo 17, the right rear fenders were damaged. On Apollo 15, the front left fender extension was damaged. So, yes, it's... I think it's an excellent point.
In no way is Steve actually addressing the point that Scott made.
Of course I am. How am I not addressing the point? Scott Henderson is saying all 3 rovers were used for the same film shoot, and I'm showing quite clearly that's not the case.
Keep your teeth a little bit. With the missing rear right fender, there is no picture because the Apollo 15 rover did not lose its right.
So it was a different bloody prop.
It can't be a different rover. It's got to be a different prop. Oh dear. I mean, these people really are a lost cause, I think. Bias blind spot doesn't even begin to cover this, does it?
So there's a gaping chasm number 1.
No, it's not. He just used
the oil.
It's not a gaping chasm. Scott used the wrong word.
There are lots of gaping chasms in history, Ben, because people have used the wrong word.
You're blowing this out of all proportion, Steve.
Oil-free.
I'm highlighting an excellent point. It's deceptive. Deliberately deceptive.
A wheel.
And all right, so now we come on to the oil-free wheel. Because remember, earlier on Steve was saying, Steve was talking about how... how come it was an oil leak when only the back wheels
Got to have the Steve mumbling voice, of course. Notice I don't have a Ben voice.
got covered in oil? I think it's dust kicked up by the front wheel. That's why the front wheel's clean and the back wheel.
And that is obviously the case. If you actually look at the images, if you watch a video, it's obvious that's what's happening.
It's covered with dust.
We'll just look at this very quickly because it's not going to take very long to address.
Thank goodness for that.
As you can see, there is already starting a build-up of dust adhered to there and to the hub and to the shaft.
Yes, the problem is the wheel that's gathering the bit of dust is the front wheel.
No, it isn't. If you look at the video, I'm indicating dust gathering on the back wheel by the blue box, if I remember rightly, on the Apollo on the rover from Apollo 17. So this is another thing where Ben is completely wrong. He sees what he wants to see.
The back wheel. So maybe if you are getting dust on the back wheel, you say the dust is on the back wheel, not the front. Scott says the oil leak is the back.
And remember too, there are no streaks of oil anywhere. There's no, and these guys are saying this was actually filmed on Earth, so you're talking about 1 Earth G. So you're going to get streaks of oil all across the hub, over the wheel itself. This is just nonsense.
You're now saying there's dust on the front wheel as well?
No, that's not what I said at all, Ben. If you're going to comment on my videos, watch the video and listen to what I'm saying. Don't jump to conclusions, flick through it and see what you want to see.
Well, when you claim the back wheel, the dust on the back wheel explains what Scott thought was oil.
Of course it does. Okay, well, let's move on to the next bit. Yes, this I think is quite interesting.
Because he's going to do an experiment. Apparently he's going to get hold of this thing.
Yeah, I said because Annin still make American flags, and I said in my video that they're not very expensive. I might buy one and wash it, hang it up, and film it drying.
Flag, because apparently that particular flag is still on sale. Not the original one, of course. That's on the moon or in Area 51, I believe.
Freudian slip was that, Ben? The original one's on the moon. I think you're right.
But you can actually buy the same flag from the supplier. It's still on sale now.
Well, a similar flag, that's for sure.
Steve, in a sense, I think is as it may well have proved himself right in this particular point.
Look at his face, he looks like he's chewing a wasp. That Steve Mumbling has proved himself right on this particular point. But then because I've proved that, because he thinks I've proved the point suddenly becomes insignificant.
But in a sense it's a deviation from other much more interesting points.
Well, no, it's a point that's made by the fake moon landing Muppets. Scott Henderson said it's a wet flag. So now Ben's saying, well, okay, yeah, Steve Mumbling's right, it's not a wet flag, but, you know, so what? It's a bit like, you know, Bob Lazar doesn't have any qualifications. So what? He's bound to still be a top physicist working on an alien spacecraft. Hang on, let's just see what else he's got to say here.
Now, this particular flag is, I'll come on to it in a minute, but basically, there is other evidence.
No, I think we'll stop that there. I think the fact that he said that I've proved myself right with regard to the flag is good enough. So we can put a line through Scott Henderson's flag argument, and we can put a line through Scott Henderson's they used the same lunar rover for all 3 missions argument. Okay, not doing too well so far, is he? Yeah, again, I should have just let that run on a bit because I think this is quite a good point.
Other conspirators he's got here.
It's not all in our heads.
I think we've just demonstrated that it is.
It's not all in our heads. And
all there is between those 2 ears is false flags, recovered alien spacecraft that have crashed. You know, 9/11 is a government job, and the moon landings were fake. That's all that's in there.
saying conspirators is immediately sets the scene. It immediately sets the whole scene for what's happened, and the thing is, he justifies this because Marcus at one point calls Elon Musk a cowboy. Not that being a cowboy is necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you could be a really, really cool cowboy. You know, you could even be a gay cowboy, like the ones in Brokeback Mountain. It's just...
Okay, well, let's just go to a clip of Marcus Allen calling Elon Musk a cowboy, and you can make your own mind up with regard the context that Marcus Allen is using. Well, okay, let's hear let's hear Marcus Allen calling Elon Musk a cowboy, and you see if you think that the context that Marcus Allen is using here is as described by Ben previously.
You shield it, but they don't seem to be able to do that, and then we have that cowboy Elon Musk who says he's going to send tourists to the moon next year.
Someone's bought a ticket, apparently. Someone's bought a ticket.
Okay, so in what context do you think Marcus Allen was using the word cowboy then when he was referring to Elon Musk? Okay, let's get back to Ben. This I think is quite amusing. Now, Ben, I actually asked Marcus Allen to, explain to us why he would say von Braun and co. were the Germans that got America to the moon if America never went to the moon. I was hoping to get a response from Marcus Allen. But Ben feels that he needs to respond on Mr. Allen's behalf. And I think Mr. Allen is probably going to wish that he didn't bother. Let's have a listen to what Ben has to say.
I'm taking what you're saying. You say von Braun and co. were the German scientists that got America to the moon. Now, America never went to the moon. How can von Braun and co. possibly be the German scientists that got America to the moon?
This is something that Steve thinks is some massive contradiction and some massive kind of piece of hypocrisy.
Well, yes, I do. And I think anybody would. If you've got someone constantly standing on lecterns, telling crowds of people that it's all fake, it's all rubbish, it never happened, and then he stands on a lectern and says, von Braun and co. were the Germans that got America to the moon. And, shows a picture of Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong and says, oh, this picture was taken before they even reached the moon. Now, how many ways can you take those statements?
Hypocrisy on Marcus's part. He's picked this out in attempt to discredit Marcus by saying, look, you say that Germans got US to the moon, and you say people didn't go to the moon, so why is that? What's that all about? Now, the thing about it is, and that is really nitpicking. Now, I'll say this again.
No, it isn't. No, it is not nitpicking. It's an excellent observation. It's an excellent point. It's an excellent question. We really need an answer from Mr. Allen, I think.
And I actually did address this before, and Steve's asked me to direct.
No, he didn't. He's never addressed this.
Viewers to where I address his points before if he repeats himself. And I addressed it in a second reply to him on the moon landings, where
when he said he addressed it before, what he actually said was, well, what's wrong with that? They weren't they? When I said, Marcus Allen has just said von Braun and co. the Germans that got America to the moon. The way Ben addressed that, I haven't. I should have actually prepared the clip of him actually saying that. But what Ben said was, so what's wrong with that? And I said, well, obviously, that's a Freudian slip on Ben's part, because if Ben thought that they weren't the German scientists that got America to the moon, he wouldn't be agreeing with it, would he?
I respond to his criticism of Marcus's talk at Dreaming Sources. And it was a conference, so he says, a conference if that's what you call it. Well, what else would you call it? Yes.
Well, it could be a waiting room of some kind, probably, possibly. Someone waiting for someone in a white coat to come through a door and say, next, possibly.
So that's where I did it. Now, Marcus, just because Marcus is, in a sense, Marcus is, he's avoiding having to constantly...
Yeah, he's avoiding having to explain why he said that. That's what he's avoiding.
Repeat what essentially is a truism when you look at his entire hypothesis, which is Germans got the US, would have got the US to the moon if Americans had gone. Right?
Well, that's not what he said. He didn't say these are the Germans that would have got America to the moon had they have gone. He said they were the Germans that got America to the moon. There's no ambiguity with that statement. What Ben is saying here is nonsense. It's fluff. It's clutching at straws.
He keeps having to repeat that over and over again. It's a bit of a verbal shackle. And to get around that, you just make certain statements in which you think you assume people already know what you mean. You assume...
Is this making sense to anybody?
The viewer, the audience...
And he actually suggested that I might be on Wacky Backy at some point in this video. Well, what do you think Ben's on here?
already has some knowledge of the point you are making outside of the actual words.
Okay, got it so far?
In other words, they can pick up the subtext of what you're saying.
Well, no. When you're saying something, you don't rely on people picking up subtext. They don't reading things into what you're saying. They listen to what you say. He said they're the Germans that got America to the moon. How can you take that any other way? How can you get from that they are the Germans that would have got America to the moon had they have gone?
When he says, "Oh, Germans apparently got US to the moon," what Marcus is saying is that
no, there was no apparently in there. And I included the clip. He said, Marcus Allen said, they were the Germans that got America to the moon.
there was a massive German involvement in the Apollo program, and this is true.
Oh, wait a minute. So now there is a real Apollo program, is there, Ben? With a massive German involvement. Or was there a massive German involvement on the film set, possibly, in the big shed in Nevada? Or was it Arizona? So now Ben is saying there's a massive German involvement in the Apollo project, the Apollo program.
The rocket designs were based on missiles that were developed in Nazi Germany.
Oh, so there were rocket designs. Apollo used rockets, did they, Ben? They're not just, sort of big tubes painted white with USA written on them. They're rockets. Oh, okay, so there's a real Apollo program, and it involves rockets. Well, there might be hope for you yet, Ben.
And with the help of other people like Jack Parsons, and I could do an entire video on Jack Parsons, who
Never heard of him.
was an American, not a German. But this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. And so Marcus is, in a sense, just opening up an element.
Can of worms. That's what he's opening up, Ben, and you know it.
Of the story. It's not a contradiction.
Of course it is.
And now, after that happens, I'll go forward. The same can't be said for something else, and I will give Steve his due. He brings up something similar, and you have to give a different answer, and I'm going to have to give a different answer to it.
Yeah, I wonder why you, if you wouldn't mind giving us an explanation as to why you're trying to explain this, Ben. Why isn't Marcus Allen explaining this?
Okay, so I'll just go forward to the right timestamp.
Our channel, Ben's channel, Bob, historical account. Apparently, Marcus Allen debated the British Interplanetary Society, and
Yes, he did. Marcus is very brave. He's absolutely fearless.
Yeah, that's why you're explaining for him, Ben, because he's fearless. Okay, I think I'll stop this here and see if I can find something else. Okay, this might be worth a listen, or a look, or both.
he only doubts the photographic record. Perhaps you could clear that up for us, Mr. Allen. That's not attacking you. That's just
Okay. Now, Steve first complains that we haven't replied to him. Well, this is the reply.
And you still haven't replied, Ben.
It's he asks these questions, he puts these comments in, and I think he expects an immediate response, which he's not necessarily going to get, especially when
No, I don't expect an immediate response at all, Ben, but when you do a response video, it would be nice to actually get a response rather than all this bloody fluff.
books to write and things like that. It's a fair, I suppose it's a fair question when you
Yeah, it is. Of course it's a fair question.
read that sentence that I read out. But put it into the context of the rest of the material on Allist.com.
Yeah, it's all rubbish. Absolutely all rubbish. Oh dear. Yeah, okay.
And in the book Dark Moon, it's on my shelf over there, you may just be able to see it on the corner there. I'm not going to get it out, but you may just be able to see the book.
Something funny going on with the focus on this camera. I'm not going to try and look at his book. Yeah, I think this camera might be on its way out. It's never done this with the focus before.
Dark Moon, Apollo and the Whistleblowers, which I've got on my shelf, which I've read. It's an excellent book. It's one of the things that got me into this subject. Now, in that book and on the Orlis.com website, the authors, that's Mary Bennett and David Percy, refer to something called the Surrogate Apollo program.
Could be anything but the real Apollo program. You know, it wasn't the real Apollo program that had all the rockets and all this stuff. It was a surrogate Apollo program. With these conspiracy people, anything can be, you know, any particular thing can be anything other than what it really is. There always has to be something else going on. It's just so nonsensical. A surrogate Apollo program.
And they actually asked a question, and this actually comes up on the John Ronson program, which Marcus was on, which is For the Love of Moon Landings, which is, and indeed Mary's on there as well, and David, and a couple of other people. Matthew Williams is even on there, Andy Thomas, and well, I'm sure. Well, I wasn't into this, but if they'd asked me to go on there, I don't know what I'd have done. But anyway, they talk about the Surrogate Moon program. Now, what the question is, did other and unnamed astronauts sacrifice their lives to do what the named astronauts actually did?
Now, did the surrogate astronauts sacrifice their lives to do what the named astronauts actually did? That makes sense to you? Is this Ben's subconscious talking again? So the named astronauts actually did what, Ben? Sat in a shed in Nevada, in Arizona, or did they actually go to the moon? I wonder. Now let's just listen to that again. That's 2137. Let's just go back to there.
Well, I wasn't into this, but if they'd asked me to go on there, I don't know what I'd have done. But anyway, they talk about the Surrogate Moon program. Now, what the question is, did other and unnamed astronauts sacrifice their lives to do what the named astronauts actually did?
What the named astronauts actually did. Another Freudian slip there from Ben. It suggests quite strongly that he believes that they went to the moon, named astronauts, doesn't it?
This has come up several times. So the idea that there is a parallel space program.
Parallel space program. Oh God. Yeah, why have an Apollo program, you know, costing however many $1 billion when you can have two for twice as much money, eh, Ben?
Which is done in secret.
And why would that be exactly?
And that very often there are disasters which occur and astronauts die. Some even go on suicide missions where they know they're going to die.
Some go on suicide missions where they know they're going to die. Now, personally, I think that is absolute rubbish. I don't think any astronaut is going to volunteer to go on a suicide mission. So I'd be very grateful, Ben, if you could back that up with some kind of evidence. You've got some sort of documentation, perhaps, that might indicate that people have signed up for suicide missions. I think we'd all be very, very interested to see that.
And receive no acclaim for it at all. And the only and then there's named astronauts which get all the publicity, which are the fake ones. Now, it's not just the United States that.
Well, they were the fake ones. What did they actually do then, Ben? You're confusing me now.
Percy
I think he's confusing himself, to be honest.
Talk about in this situation. In fact, most of the examples they come up with are actually Russian. With the
Yeah, I think I've had about all I can take of Ben's explanation. If that's the right word. Let's see what else we can find. I think this is worth a look because, you know, Ben was complaining about me calling them Muppets and morons and all that sort of stuff and my ad hominem attacks on these guys. And then he goes and does something like this.
Apollo missions went actually launched. There's actually an episode of a TV show called I think it's Horizon. I think a very old science TV show where you see one of the presenters, a guy called James Burke, who's actually he's actually a really good pop scientist, TV presenter, You know, in the days where these people were actually dignified and informative, and they weren't just flash Harrys who talk crap like Professor Brian Cox. You know, it's
really, Ben. Tad hypocritical, possibly, just like Marcus Allen calling Elon Musk a cowboy. Perhaps the viewers could make up their own mind as to whether or not you two are doing exactly the same thing. All right, next. And again, we have Ben drifting off into the world of fantasy.
right. There was some poor sound quality on that. I'm sorry, I don't know where that was. It was something to do with my Skype connection. Carry on.
But here again, these people he's got on his panel are demonstrating their complete ignorance with regard.
The comments like those make up the bulk of Steve's recent uploads on this subject.
Yeah, it's because you're uploading a lot of misleading rubbish. You know, there are a lot of people out there that aren't in a position to know that what you're saying is rubbish. And you're leading them down the garden path. And really, there should be something out there that sort of gives them something. So if you make a ridiculous claim, and there's a video that's countering that ridiculous claim, you know, and it's just an easy to follow video with an example, maybe a couple of images, then I think people that aren't in a position to know that what you're saying is a load of rubbish should be given that alternative view, I think. And they can look at the two and they can make their minds up as to what they're going to believe. And, you know, a lot of people are referring this to the Apollo hoax and all this. It's not a hoax. You know, a hoax is a bit of harmless fun. What you're accusing NASA and the Americans of is gross fraud. You know, it's what you're accusing them of is very, very serious. And it would be extremely offensive to all the people that worked on that program. All this ridiculous nonsense that you lot are coming out with.
Now, how many times do you have to say that people are ignorant and say, you know, Albert Einstein's got a stupid haircut?
I don't recall ever saying that. Perhaps you could leave a link to me saying Albert Einstein's got a stupid haircut. Yeah, I don't think I've ever said that, Ben, to be perfectly honest. In fact, my haircut is very, very similar to Albert Einstein's.
It doesn't matter how many times you say these things. These ad hominems never, ever...
You mean like Brian Cox? Or that cowboy Elon Musk? You mean those sort of ad hominems, Ben?
substitute, fill the hole of which could be filled by a logical rebuttal.
And I think in between the laughter and pointing, I just couldn't help saying how little these people are clueless. It's just the first thing that pops into my head when they make a comment. I'll look at what they're saying or listen to what they're saying. I go, it's bloody rubbish. They're clueless, But then I do go on to say why, and if I can, I show evidence as to why. What I am saying is a logical rebuttal to the bloody rubbish they're coming out with.
A rational argument. And that's something, you're not the only person who doesn't understand this, Steve. A lot of people do. In fact, like I say, it's the normal way to do business in this world.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think you should try watching the videos, Ben, because there is an awful lot of logical rebuttal in there with evidence to back it up. Okay, let's go on to the next clip. Okay, this might just be worth a mention.
So here's part two of the Apollo defectives. Now, I think what we'll start with is the chef.
The chef is Scott Henderson. This is one of about 3 or 4 times he actually calls Scott the chef. It's like, what's your job, Steve? Should I call you that and say because this is...
Yeah, okay, well this is... a couple of points here. One is, to be honest, I couldn't remember his name. And the other thing was that because he was he's using technical terms like the inverse square law. I wanted to indicate that he's not a technical guy, so you might not expect him to have much of an understanding of that. So there's 2 points there. So I might have called him the chef on a few occasions, a couple of occasions because I couldn't remember his bloody name, and on 1 or 2 occasions because I wanted to make the point that he's not a technical guy. So yeah, that was all that was about. I think you're reading a little bit too much into that, Ben. All right, next. And again,
most of which, at least half of which, Steve doesn't address in his series of films, but he does address some of the things that Scott.
Yeah, we've got to bear in mind that a lot of what they say is not worthy of comment. You know, some of what they were saying. I can't remember if they're actually saying it on here or whether it was just on the All This site. They were talking about the landing being filmed over a rubbish dump and cars being buried to form the landscape, and I thought, well, I wouldn't comment on that. It's just not worthy of comment, is it?
Has said and attempts to discredit them, and I'll just here's a couple of examples. The first one is the Lunar rover. Now you see a picture of the Lunar rover there.
He describes he's always on a rear wheel. It's never on the front wheel, it's always on a rear wheel.
Well, it is though, and I'll come to that later. But basically, Steve is what happens is Scott has.
Yes, it is always on the rear wheel. And now Ben is going to say that I contradict myself and say it's on the front wheel, and I don't. He's got that completely wrong. There's only dust accumulation on the rear wheels because the dust is thrown up by the front wheels. There's no dust on the front wheels because there's nothing in front of the front wheels to throw the dust up. So yeah, it's again, this is Ben not paying attention, seeing what he wants to see.
So pointed out what he thinks might be an oil leak on the Lunar rover.
Now bear in mind, they're saying this was filmed on the Earth, so you got 1 Earth G. If there was an oil leak on the rear wheel, there'd be streaks all over the hub, there'd be streaks all over the wheels. It's just absolute twaddle.
On the Lunar rover next to the back wheel, and so Steve is now addressing that.
Never on the front wheel, always on a rear wheel. And that's because as the rover goes along, the dust is kicked up from the front wheel. Of course, there's nothing in front of the front wheel to kick the dust up. So
well, this is funny because later on he brings up a completely separate point about the Lunar rover, where you do get dust coming up from the front wheel. So.
Well, that's what I just said, wasn't it? You get dust coming up from the front wheel.
I'm not sure what he's talking about.
I think you're... looks to me like you don't know what you're talking about, Ben. I think what you're trying to grasp for is that you seem to be under the impression that I indicated there was some dust on a front wheel at some point, and you jumped on that and said that was a contradiction. I never, ever pointed out dust on a front wheel. Okay, next. Now here again, Ben is showing that he's flicked through the video, or he's looked at the video and he's misunderstood it. He's got absolutely no grasp of what was going on in my video that he's commenting on.
1740, there you are. Whoops.
You're playing a piano? Come on, Ben, sort it out.
pictures from the moon, yet allow pictures like this. This is from the NASA site. This is not from the Beano, not from Nexus magazine. How would the inverse square law?
He's taking too long to get to the point now. I don't.
No, and you're missing the point completely. Well, I'll just let him carry on a bit.
I want to just sit through his chuckling. He's showing a picture from Mars, from one of the recent Mars missions, and he's making the point is, well, look, you can actually get good images from Mars between these planets, but he says, well, are these fake too? Is this done in a studio? Well,
no, that's not the point at all. I didn't say that whatsoever. Scott Henderson. Somebody said, what would happen if, you know, the Chinese or the Russians went to the moon and they sent back from the moon high definition images? This is today we're talking about, not 1969. Of the lunar landers and rovers all in place on the lunar surface, just as the Americans left them back in 1969. What would our stance be on this then? And then Scott Henderson said, well, that will never happen because the inverse square law would prohibit it. And my question was, why would the inverse square law, this is to Scott Henderson, why would the inverse square law prohibit high definition images from the moon, yet allow them high definition images from Mars and further out in the solar system? That was the question. So where Ben is getting all this other bloody nonsense from, this is just all in his head. This is what he wants. This is what he wants me to be saying, I think. He's obviously not watched my bloody video. He's well, I'm going to say it again. He's bloody clueless. That's nothing whatsoever to do with it.
Well, firstly, yes, maybe they are. Watch the Rich Planet program about that.
I never said they were they could be fake. And you know, this guy is. If you're going to do these, Ben, pay attention to what you're commenting on. For goodness sake, you're making yourself look more of a bloody idiot than you normally do.
Which questions the actual Mars missions. Secondly, it's a still picture. It's not a TV image.
And remember, the context of this has got nothing whatsoever to do with video. The question was, if the Russians or the Chinese went there today and sent back high-definition images of the lunar lander, etc., what would our stance be on the fake Apollo missions, the fake moon landing missions then? No answer, of course, from the other members of the panel, but Scott Henderson piped up, never happened because of the inverse square law would prohibit it. And I'll repeat the question. Why would the inverse square law prohibit high-definition images from the moon? Changi 4 seems to be doing okay, come to think of it, doesn't it? And prohibit the images from the moon, yet allow them from Mars and further out in the solar system. So he's going off all over the place here. This has got absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the point I was making or the question I was asking.
So the bandwidth doesn't have to be half as wide. It's electronic still, so it's a much smaller file than a large TV motion picture.
Been on Wikipedia again by the look of it. But anyway, he's going off at a tangent here. This is completely irrelevant to the point that I was making. I'll say it again, Ben. If you're going to do these, watch the video and listen to what I'm saying. Don't hear and see what you want to see and hear. I think this might be worth a very quick look.
So they're a bit worried about this, and they said these things should be treated as national monuments because anything goes on there and contaminates them. For example, extra footprints or tracks from a rover or something, and that would spoil it. You see what I mean? And the flags. I'll come on to the flags later, actually, because he says a lot. I'm going ahead of myself if I mention the flags now. But anyway, let's carry on.
You know you did. These people are just I don't know. A question I'd be asking the scientist as well is, I'll ask Ben to ask the scientist if he's ever been under the care of a mental health professional.
Oh, so we're nuts now, are we? Did you see how unprofessional you were being, Steve?
Well, that's because I'm not a professional, Ben. I'm just an amateur YouTuber. I make videos for a bit of fun. I'm not a professional. Why on earth would I be professional? I'm not being paid for this. This is just a bit of fun. And I think that's a very good question because he sounds to me like that may very well be the case. To be perfectly honest, I mean, obviously I could be wrong. It's an impression I get, but. And I think the fact that Ben jumps on this suggests that may very well be the case.
You're not doing yourself any favours here, mate. You're really not.
I think that would be an interesting question for it.
No, it wouldn't. Stupid question.
Let's see what
Stupid question. Not so sure about that one. what about an answer to that question, Ben? Simple no would suffice, but I suspect it's far more likely to be a simple yes. Okay, let's go on to the next clip. Now, this is an interesting point of view. They were talking about the lunar, what is it, lunar orbiter, whatever it is. It's a mapping satellite, and they're saying, oh, you know, why are these pictures so, you know, such a poor definition? And I said, well, it's a mapping satellite. It's not a spy satellite. You know, specifications to building these things would be completely different. And let's just see what, because it was showing shots of one of the Apollo landing sites and the descent stage, and I think the lunar rover and whatever, actually on the lunar surface. And they're saying, well, it could be photoshopped. It's not, you know, it's not very good definition. But it's a map. The pictures were taken from a mapping satellite, not from a spy satellite. You know, a spy satellite would cost awful lot more money than a mapping satellite.
For example, spy satellites, for example, that can read a newspaper from up in space. Why didn't they have those on the LRO? So that we.
Well, because they're not required on the LRO. You do not need the sort of definition that would allow you to read a newspaper from orbit on a mapping satellite. You'd be talking about, you know, the cost of the project would be grossly inflated with those sort of specifications.
Get much better pictures than we do instead of these 1 metre per pixel blobs that we have here. Anyway, Steve's got an answer to that.
Answer your question, Nancy. Find that light.
They put in orbit around the moon are they're mapping satellites. They're not spy satellites.
All right. Just to cut him off laughing there again. He's saying that that's not their point. That the point of the LRO is not to actually to get photographs. That's not their the prime objective of their mission was not to get these photographs. The prime objective of the mission was to create an accurate map of the moon.
Exactly.
To do that, they only need to be about as sensitive as the satellites used to create Google Earth. So that's about 1 pixel per square metre. And the LRO photos of the Apollo landing sites are almost just like a byproduct. That's not. I don't think that's a very good answer, personally, because if I was designing this mission, I would actually. I think I would have anticipated the desire to see the Apollo landing sites in better clarity.
Yeah, but that's because you're a conspiracy theorist, Ben. You know, there's the percentage of people that actually believe the sort of fake moon landing rubbish is very small. You know, no one is going to send a satellite equipped with high definition cameras, spy satellite type spec to the moon, just to photograph the Apollo landing sites. You know, it's pointless. Why would anybody do that? When there's a handful of people that believe it wasn't done. No one's going to spend money proving to people that are considered to be idiots by everybody that it was done. I mean, when they start mining the helium-3 on the moon, they're going to say, "Oh, look, there's all this stuff," you know. We've really got to work around this because it's a monument. Can't we just sweep all this stuff up? It's old junk, you know, but it's going to be there, and that'll be all over the news. And you know, when they start strip mining the helium-3. I'm sure there'll be plenty of high definition pictures of all the Apollo stuff, and it'll put this stupid bloody nonsense to bed once and for all. What else is he going to say here?
I've included an instrument on the craft that could do that.
Yeah, you would, Ben, but nobody else would. Nobody in their right mind would. Yeah, no, I think we'll stop that one there. Okay, getting close to the end, mercifully.
Are in the Stars and Stripes.
This is the reflection of the flag in the lunar module window.
Interesting thing as well is that Steve. One of the things Steve says, the LEM window is convex, so it's a slightly.
No, again, I don't know where he got this from. I I never said the window is convex. Perhaps you could provide a link to me saying the window is convex, Ben. Watch my videos and listen to what I'm saying, and you might treat yourself and get an understanding of what was really happening. He's seeing and hearing exactly what he wants to see and hear, like he always does.
A convex window, or because it's something to do with pressure differentials or something. Well, indeed, the actual image you see in this convex window,
it's not convex. The window is not convex. I never said the window was convex.
Slightly curved. The flagpole in the reflection is slightly curved, which is what you would expect if it was a reflection from a convex surface.
Remember, it's not a convex surface. And what they're calling the flagpole is not curved either. Don't know where he's going with this.
You also see a number of structures behind it, which Steve is going to come to, and so will I. But first, let's listen to Steve's explanation for what he thinks the flagpole is. So we'll go forward a bit.
I think if anyone looks at it, it should be obvious to them very quickly what they're calling the flagpole actually is.
There is the bar to assist with big Muppets. Calling the... Okay, so here we are inside the Lunar module, and we can see this is what...
Okay, he's just showing up a picture of the inside of the Lunar module, which I'll show you in a minute.
Moonfake Muppets. Calling...
Moonfake Muppets. He's trying to be original now.
The flagpole, it's actually a
Well, I haven't heard that before, have you?
graticule on the window.
Right, yeah. It's a graticule. Now, if you look at this picture, I'll show you the picture now.
Pretty obvious, I think. There's the flagpole. And as I said in my video, you can see that line going across the graticule there. And remember too that they're looking through this window from about 20 feet down. It's quite a long way down. They're looking up at an angle, and they're seeing this, and then they're seeing the clipboard behind it. Ben says the clipboard is in the wrong place, but it isn't, because it's in the middle. It's between the two windows. And if you were to draw a line from the centre of that, and remember the clipboard as exactly the same aspect ratio as what they're calling the flag, you draw a line from the centre of that through the window, you'll see this is the flagpole, and the clipboard is what they're calling the flag. This stuff here is just where I was at the time, reflecting off of the image. That's got nothing to do with the argument or the point.
You will see there is a graticule. Now, this is something embossed onto the inside of the window.
Good old Wikipedia, ain't it?
The Apollo mission. This is Apollo...
Hang on.
This is the Apollo, sorry, the Lunar module. The Lunar module has this basically embedded in the glass. It's basically an image embedded in the glass. It's actually a navigation aid. It's called a graticule, and you can see it there. You can just see it there. Now, Steve says that's actually what the flagpole is. It's just this graticule. Just a few slight problems, and that is that you'd see there's a few slight problems with that. The graticule does not resemble the image reflected. For example, if you look at the graticule, you'll see it's not just a straight line. It has a straight line, but it also has two horizontals at the top and bottom.
And you can see those in what they're calling the reflection.
Now, in the reflection, you don't see these horizontals.
Yes, you do. Again, he's not seeing what he doesn't want to see. I actually pointed it out in my video. I said nobody ever talks about this line. This just sloping line across the window, but sloping from the outside. It's sloping from the right up towards the left, and from the inside, it's sloping from the left up towards the right. I actually mentioned that and pointed it out, and he's not showing that, is he? Why is that, Ben? Is that too good a point, perhaps?
Also, it's not curved. It's not curved. It's actually straight. If you look...
Who said it was curved? I never said it was curved.
Look at it from the inside, you'll see it's straight. And you might argue, well, curvature, you can get a curvature through refraction from the outside, but...
All completely irrelevant. This is gibberish. The glass isn't curved.
You don't get that on convex windows. You can get a...
Well, it's not a convex window, Ben. Don't know where on earth this is all coming from. This is nonsense, gibberish.
magnification, as you see with people who have very thick, glasses on their eyes. You don't get distortion like you do with a reflection. Also, the graticule has superimposed measurement marks on it, and these measurements...
which are too small to see when you're 20 feet away. This is not a point, again, it's pointless.
That go behind the flagpole. And that's very interesting, because you can actually see these measurement marks on the reflection, which Steve doesn't point out, but I do. I'm surprised he didn't spot that, actually, and try to use it as evidence that was a graticule.
Well, maybe I will. If that's something I've missed, then if you can actually see those measurement marks, I mean, that proves conclusively that that's what it is, doesn't it? Now he's arguing with himself.
The thing about it is, though, the marks, if you look at the marks, the measurement marks on the reflection, they're completely straight, which is what you'd expect, because they're completely straight on the inside. You can see quite clearly they're completely straight on the inside. However, the marks go completely straight, and the flagpole curves slightly, so the marks actually, because they're straight, converge on the reflection. And I do think it's a reflection. Whereas if that straight line, which you think is the graticule and not a flagpole...
Well, you just said it had the other markers on it, didn't you? You just told us all that you think it's the graticule, and you can actually see the measurement lines on it, the measurement markers on it. I think you ought to make your mind up, Ben. You're all over the place here.
Really was the graticule. It would also be straight. That's where I think you've got it wrong as well. Now,
that looks straight to me.
Go forward a bit longer, because Steve has an explanation for what he thinks is the big square thing, which Marcus and Scott thinks is a flag, and I think it's quite likely to be a flag too. Let's go forward. There we go.
Okay, so here we have Neil Armstrong.
Well, he's showing another picture now. Okay. This is the picture that Marcus... Sorry, this is the picture that Steve is now showing.
Yeah. Now, Ben is going to say this is in the wrong place. There's the window. Remember, the camera angle is down here. It's about 20 feet down outside that window that way. Look at the graticule. It's in parallel with the edge of this. Look at the aspect ratio of the clipboard. They're looking up through this window, up at an angle. They're looking up at an angle. Graticule, edge of flag. I think that's very obviously what it is. And he's saying, oh, this is in the wrong place, blah, blah, blah. I don't see any stars and stripes on his flag. He says he does. So perhaps, we'll get on there with Ben one time and some of these other guys, and they can point out where these stars and stripes are. I think that would be quite interesting.
This picture of Neil Armstrong, a photograph allegedly taken of Neil Armstrong, the astronaut, inside the lunar module.
Looks like Neil Armstrong to me.
And look at that big white thing there. Steve's going to explain.
Inside the lunar module. And we see the notes hanging up here, the mission notes, the running order, if you like, for the mission.
It's a clip.
It's not quite square, it's slightly...
He's basically saying it's a clipboard. What you see in that reflection is something inside the lunar module. It's a clipboard.
Yes, it is. It's very obvious that that's what it is.
It's a clipboard hanging up, the one you saw in that picture. Well, there's several things wrong with that. First,
there's nothing wrong with that at all.
If there was all this massive amount of sunlight that illuminates the snowy landscape that you used to see in England, Steve, remember? How come that glare doesn't stop you seeing inside?
If that was the case, it would be so bright that you wouldn't see anything reflected in it, would you, Ben?
You know how difficult it is to see inside through a window when you're outside and there's a lot on a sunny day. Second problem is, it's on the wrong side of the cabin.
No, it isn't. He's completely incapable of thinking three-dimensionally. I think this is a very good demonstration of that. He can't, in his head, place himself outside of the lunar module. looking up through that window at the angle of the camera shot, through the graticule at that clipboard. He is incapable of doing that. I think most people could do that. They can sort of place themselves three-dimensionally, mentally, in a location and imagine what they would see from that position. Ben is incapable of doing that. And I think if you look at my explanation with the clipboard, the graticule, the angle, remember 20 feet below or so, most people I think would say, yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Take a look at the photo, look at Neil, look at where he's sitting. He's sitting facing the control panel. The windows are to the left and right of him. You can actually see the window frame behind the back of his head. It's just by the nape of his neck.
Yes, and I just showed the angle with my pen, didn't I? Yeah, he's really got no idea. I don't know whether he's deliberately not seeing it, because we know he's done a lot of that. Either that or he really is as dumb as a box of hammers. He doesn't sound as dumb as a box of hammers, though, a lot of the time, does he, Ben? He sort of sounds sort of reasonably intelligent, but some of these comments are just stupid, really ridiculous.
You can see the edge of the window frame, the left-hand window frame. How do I know that? Well, because I've looked at the design for the interior of the LEM. Look at what's above. Look above the control panel.
This is irrelevant. What's relevant is where the clipboard is hanging between the two windows. You know, the angle that you would see that clipboard at if you were out the other side of that window on the ground looking up at it. Yeah, I think that's enough of that twaddle. All right, well, I think that might be the end. I'll just flick it forward and see if there's anything else here. Okay, this is just this is Ben commenting on my comment about Scott Henderson's comment about the Blue Watch showing Florida time. Now let's just see what Ben's got to say about this.
If you look at the mission control now, the time on board the spacecraft during this particular mission was basically the time in Houston, Texas. That was where mission control.
No, completely inaccurate. Mission elapsed time was recorded on a panel clock in the lunar module. I explained this in the video, and a panel clock in the lunar module. And I haven't actually checked this, but Bob Branning tells me that mission control were giving them time prompts as well, audible time prompts. But the point that I made about the Omega Moonwatch and why NASA chose the Omega Speedmaster as the Moonwatch, rather, was that the specification for it had to be a robust chronograph. It's a stopwatch. It's for timing what they're doing on the lunar surface. It does not need to show mission elapsed time. It doesn't need to show Houston time. The reason it shows Florida time is they would have set it to Florida time because they were living in Florida up to the launch, and you know, they would have needed to know what time they were being launched and what time they were having a briefing and all that sort of stuff. Makes perfect sense for the watch to be on Florida time. Ben doesn't address this at all. He doesn't mention the comments that I made about it, about the mission elapsed time clocks, the lunar module and the command module. The fact that the NASA specified a chronograph for the guys when they walked around on the moon, because it's a stopwatch. It's a stopwatch function. It does not need to display mission elapsed time. He's completely missing the point. Again, either deliberately or he just doesn't get it. But either way, he's missing the point entirely.
I was in Houston. So now what happened was, though, to begin with, when the mission was launched, they were on East Coast time, that's Florida, because the mission was launched from Florida and controlled from Texas. The United States is a big country and it has 4 time zones. So they actually, what happened was, as soon as that mission was launched, it was up in the air. So they used East Coast time before they launched the rocket.
So far, so good. Yep.
The astronauts put all their watches onto East Coast time, so they would know when they were supposed to turn up at briefings and training sessions.
That's pretty much what I said. Yes. So far, so good. Carry on, Ben.
And things like that. And so they actually got onto the rocket on time, and they didn't miss it, so the rocket took off without them.
well, is it too late to retract that last statement? That's obviously ridiculous. They're not going to be launching the rocket without anybody. Okay.
That kind of thing. Once they were up in space, they were on mission control time.
They were on mission elapsed time, which was displayed on a panel clock on the dashboard of the command module, and there's an identical clock on the dashboard of the Lunar module made by Bolivar. They were Bolivar Accutron panel clocks.
So that, I think, is an hour earlier. So
Completely irrelevant. And I think even on that Orlis site, it's probably about the only accurate thing on there. There's a comment supposedly from Buzz Aldrin who says there's nothing less relevant, you know, when you're walking around on the moon than what time it is in Houston. And then Scott Henderson said, well, you know, there must have been another reason why he was wearing that watch. And of course there was. It's because it's a chronograph, because it's a stopwatch. That's why NASA specified a chronograph for the stopwatch functions, the timing things on the lunar surface. Did not need to display mission elapsed time.
So they would have to set their watches back. Now there'd be plenty of time to do.
Yeah, but they didn't need to do that, and they obviously didn't bother doing that. If they want to know the mission elapsed time, they just look at the dashboard. Yeah, again, he's not listened to the points I'm making. He's not telling you the points I made.
Do this during the journey between the Earth and the Moon. It took a few days to get there. They had plenty of time.
Yeah, he just doesn't get it. He either really just doesn't get it, or he doesn't want to get it, one or the other. But he's not representing my video at all accurately here. He's, you know, the points that I made are not getting a look in. And on the video that I did, I left some information about the Omega Speedmaster watch, why it was chosen, how it was chosen among you know, other manufacturers' chronographs, what tests it was subjected to make sure that it would be robust enough to work on the lunar surface. And Ben doesn't mention any of this whatsoever. Fully expect the astronauts' watches to be on Florida time. He just doesn't get it. Alright, well, if there's nothing else, I might end it there. Mercifully, there's only a few minutes to go, so I'll just see what else he's got to say. But if there's nothing there, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. There is just one other little clip that I thought was quite good.
He actually puts a flag up outside in his garden, and he says it's the Australians landed on the moon in 1973. And it's quite funny. It's really funny, actually. You see, Steve, what I'm saying is, Steve, actually, you do have a sense of humour when you are really decent, professional sense of humour. You know, you really do.
Oh, really? A professional sense of humour. Do you think I might make some money out of it, Ben?
And you can make good jokes when you want to make good jokes. And indeed, in the next video, you talk about how...
What's this? There's something on the big screen about London Underground. Blimey, I haven't seen London Underground for many a long year. Good heavens, what's that? It's full of mud. Oh, lost focus then. Anyway, that's irrelevant. Let's get back to this.
You spot something inside the camera, something inside the reflection, which you said, or the reflection photo, which you say, is proof that the moon landings were faked in 1999, and you know it because there's a picture of Darth Maul from the Star Wars film from that. And I looked at it, it's green, not red, but it does look a bit like him. But that's actually quite funny. You can make good jokes when you want to. You also film, you've got a triangular mark on your hand, which I thought was very interesting. And you make a bit of a joke about him being abducted by aliens. Well, maybe you shouldn't joke about it, Steve. You never know. What's interesting about that particular shot where you're filming your hand with the mark...
Oh, actually, before he goes on to the bit that I was going to make the point about, that wasn't a joke, actually, that mark on my hand. That's quite genuine. I just saw that on that Saturday morning, whenever it was. I thought, well, what the hell is that? And where has that come from? And I was trying to figure out what I might have that would be triangular that would do that. And it was like a triangular blood blister. So yeah, I've got no idea where that came from. But that wasn't a joke. That was something that I just saw on my hand. You know, maybe Ben's got a point. maybe you know, the lifelong interest I've had in this subject, you know, of ET and aliens and all that sort of stuff, is because I'm a hybrid. Every now and then they come and see how I'm doing. Maybe I should be regressed. Mind you, if I'm going to do that, I better wear my rubber underpants and the ones that I ordered for the next response video. But this is the bit that I wanted to just make the point about.
Is you're outdoors, and you say you can't see through the viewfinder in sunlight. Now, that's very strange because there are many things to do with the TV camera they used on Apollo, which meant that they had to deal with that situation on the moon.
Yeah, but they did. In 1969, did they have LCD viewfinders? Because the LCD viewfinder in sunlight is just black, you know. So yes, I think the point was that he seems to sort of draw some sort of comparison between me not being able to see an LCD viewfinder in brilliant Australian sunshine, and the Apollo guys with their Hasselblad cameras. I don't know. I don't think they even looked through viewfinders at all, did they? I think they were just very wide angle. They just point them in the general direction, and that's why they, you know, you see pictures of the astronauts, and it looks like they're sort of floating 3 feet in the air. They don't chop their heads off, but they're not perfectly framed, and all that sort of stuff, which is the sort of thing you'd expect to see. Anyway, I think that's going to do. That will do for this this response to response to response. And perhaps I'll catch you again.